Chapter 1. To commemorate our 6-year anniversary, Ethan Carter finally agreed to travel to Paris with me. On the day of departure, I waited for him at the airport for an hour, only to receive a message from him: "Anna, there's an urgent matter at work. You'll have to go alone." At midnight, when I landed at Paris airport, I saw Sophia Young post a photo with the caption, "What does it feel like to be cherished in someone's hands?" In the photo, two people were holding hands tightly. One of those hands was wearing the couple's ring that belonged to Ethan Carter and me. I smiled faintly and commented, "Wow. A match made in heaven, congratulations. You've always wanted to go to Paris, haven't you? This time, I promise I'll go with you." That was what Ethan Carter had said to me when booking the tickets. I had excitedly planned the trip, imagining us exploring the Louvre, embracing under the Eiffel Tower, and strolling hand in hand along the Seine, surrounded by white doves. Even when he left me at the airport, I didn't doubt him. It wasn't until I saw Sophia Young's post on her social media, recognized the familiar couple's ring, and read the caption, "What does it feel like to be cherished in someone's hands?" I couldn't hold back anymore and called Ethan Carter, leading to a heated argument. Over the phone, his voice remained cold and emotionless. "Can you stop overreacting? How many times do I have to tell you, Sophia and I are just friends?" The next day, I went to a restaurant and found the most handsome French waiter to be my guide. For €1,000, he toured me around Paris for 10 days and took photos for me. On the last day, I posted a picture on my social media, along with a photo of us raising coffee cups together, by the Seine, Left Bank Coffee. Less than 2 minutes after posting, Ethan Carter called me. The first sentence, he asked, "Who is that man?" Without waiting for my reply, the second sentence came, his voice anxious, asking again, "Where's the couple's ring on your hand?" He was in a rush. We had been together for 6 years, and Ethan Carter had never considered the possibility that I might break up with him. It seemed he always believed I would never leave him. Every time we argued, he would avoid confrontation, act cold, even block and delete me. Those were all common occurrences. For so many years, he had always been so carefree and indifferent. But he didn't know that during these 10 days in Paris, I had been reflecting on our relationship. In the past, hearing him ask me with such concern would have made me incredibly happy and excited. But now, there wasn't even a flicker of emotion in my heart. I simply answered him with 2 sentences, "I'm not good at French, he's a guide I hired in Paris." While feeding birds by the Seine, I accidentally lost the ring. The other end of the line went silent. After a long pause, I finally heard his low voice, "Tomorrow, I'll pick you up at the airport." I replied with just one word, "Okay," then hung up, turned off my phone, and continued enjoying my coffee while admiring the view by the river. At 7 in the evening, after landing, I put on my high heels, pulled 2 large suitcases, and headed to the exit. The plane ticket was booked by him. Without me needing to say anything, he knew exactly when I would arrive. But by 8 o'clock, there was still no sign of Ethan Carter. No calls, no messages, not a single one. At 8:30, I stopped waiting and dragged my suitcase to the taxi stand. It was evening rush hour, and there were so many people. I queued for 2 hours before finally getting into a cab. By the time I reached home, it was already past 11 at night. As I got out of the taxi, the driver asked me, "Young lady, you're wearing high heels, and your suitcase looks heavy. It must be tough managing on your own. Shall I help you into the apartment complex?" I thought for a moment before replying, "Thank you, but there's no need to trouble yourself. I can handle it on my own." On the way, I walked and rested intermittently, panting heavily, but eventually managed to drag my suitcase into the elevator. However, as I stepped into the elevator, my high heel accidentally got caught in the gap of the elevator door. I twisted my ankle, and a sharp, throbbing pain surged through me just as the chime of a text message rang out on my phone. "Little sister, have you thought it through? Do you want to follow Mom and Dad's advice and go abroad to study?" The message was from my older sister. I majored in fine arts, and ever since I graduated from university, my family had always hoped I would go abroad to study. If I went, they believed that after graduating and returning, I could easily find a job 10 times better than the one I currently had. I had always declined, saying I couldn't manage life on my own, but they all knew that was just an excuse. The truth was, I didn't want to leave because I couldn't bear to part with Ethan Carter. Soon, my sister sent another message, it's only for 2 years. Besides, I'm planning to go abroad soon too. Wherever you want to go, I can go with you. Chapter 2. 2 years, neither too long nor too short. Ethan Carter and I had been together since our freshman year of college, 4 years of university, 2 years after graduation. 6 full years, I had always been by his side. On graduation day, the Fine Arts Department organized an exhibition titled Future. My classmates painted their aspirations for the future, becoming great artists or traveling the world to admire its beauty. As for me, I painted Ethan Carter and myself. 6 years, he had always been part of the future I envisioned. Yet, he couldn't even pick me up to take me home in the evening. Ridiculous, pathetic, heartbreaking. The moment the elevator doors closed, an intense pain surged through my ankle. I pressed the button to send a message, "Sister, I want to study abroad in Paris." Once I got home, after a hot shower, I immediately turned on my computer. I registered for the study abroad exam next month and casually picked up the French language book on the table. This book, initially, I had prepared for this trip to Paris. Back then, Ethan Carter told me it was unnecessary. He's quite good at French, at least good enough for travel and daily communication. French is indeed very difficult to learn. At that time, because it was too hard, I stopped studying it. But tonight, I read until late into the night, eventually dozing off at the table. Anna? Anna? Ethan Carter's voice rang in my ears. I opened my eyes and saw him coming home, reeking of alcohol. I rubbed my eyes and said, "You're back. It's so late, go to bed." After speaking, I got up and headed to my room. "Anna, you." Behind me came Ethan Carter's low voice. I turned around. Under the pale white light, he frowned, as if wanting to say something but hesitating, his expression tinged with uncertainty. I guessed he probably wanted to ask why I wasn't acting like before, why I didn't ask who he drank with, why I didn't go out to pick him up. Then, as usual, I'd suspect his relationship with Sophia Young, argue with him, and eventually get angry. "Anna, when did you come back? Why didn't you answer my calls?" he asked. I glanced at my phone screen and realized he had indeed called me several times. But by then, it was already past 1 a.m. At that time, I was reading the French book, and my phone was on silent mode. Sophia Young had a breakdown earlier. She smashed a bottle at home and tried to hurt herself, so I went. "Okay," I gently replied, cutting off his explanation. As I was about to turn and head into the bedroom, he grabbed my hand tightly. "Anna, please don't be mad anymore. She and I really don't have." "Ethan, I'm not mad." I rubbed my eyes, my voice devoid of any emotion, interrupting him again, "It's late, I'm a bit tired and want to sleep. You should go to bed too." After saying that, I moved my hand, signaling for him to let go. "Anna Harper, can you stop making a fuss?" He didn't release my hand but instead looked straight into my eyes, his tone tinged with frustration. I looked at him with a puzzled expression and yawned, "What's wrong?" "I'm really sleepy. Let's talk tomorrow." He stared at me, his lips moving as if to speak, but he said nothing. After a long while, his expression grew increasingly annoyed, and finally, he let go of my hand. I turned away without looking back and walked straight into the bedroom. Bang! As soon as I lay down, I heard the sound of him slamming the door as he left. The door closed loudly, deliberately, as if he wanted me to hear it. But I paid no attention and simply closed my eyes gently. That night, I slept very well. The next morning, when I woke up, Ethan Carter had already bought breakfast, and there was a delicate box placed on the table. "Happy 6-year anniversary, Anna," He opened the box, revealing a brand new pair of matching rings inside. "The day I went to France, you got a call. Sophia Young ran out of the hospital," he said. "Her mental state was unstable, you know that, so I went to look for her. Last night, she also suddenly relapsed at home, so I—" Before Ethan Carter could finish, I smiled gently and looked at the breakfast on the table. "It's okay, let's just eat breakfast." I sat on the chair, grabbed a sandwich, and ate it voraciously. He held the ring, looking at me with deep eyes. "Anna, since the ring is lost, let's replace it with a new one." I still remembered our first anniversary when he gave me that pair of matching rings. "Ethan, this ring, I will never take it off for the rest of my life." Back then, I was so touched, I hugged him tightly, immediately putting the ring on my finger, tears welling up in my eyes. But this time, I hesitated for a few seconds, smiled, and accepted the ring. "All right. Thank you, Ethan." Placing the ring aside, I continued eating breakfast. He looked hesitant, his gaze a mix of probing and doubt as he stared at me. "Anna, are you still upset?" I gave a faint smile and replied seriously, "Upset about what?" "You and Sophia Young grew up together, like childhood sweethearts, your bond is like siblings. A brother taking care of his sister, isn't that natural?" His eyes trembled slightly, his expression complex as he looked at me, then at the ring beside me, "Then you." I casually looked away, blinking and smiling as I said, "Oh, I'll wear it right now." The ring was a bit loose, perhaps because I had lost a lot of weight over the years, which he hadn't noticed. Seeing me put it on, his expression finally relaxed, and he smiled at me. "Anna, come home with me tonight and have dinner with my parents, okay?" Hearing that, I looked up in surprise, staring straight at him. "What?" Chapter 3. 3 years ago, I visited Ethan Carter's parents for the first time. Before going, I prepared meticulously, spending several days choosing the perfect gifts. When I walked in carrying large and small bags, I saw Sophia Young chatting with his parents. "What's the fun conversation about?" He smiled and walked over, while Sophia Young gave a charming smile, tilting her head and saying, "We're talking about how silly you were as a kid, Ethan." I stood at the door, feeling awkward and flustered, until the housekeeper led me inside. After that visit, Ethan Carter always found excuses to avoid taking me back to his home again. I had a vague feeling that his parents didn't like me. If it had been before, when he mentioned taking me to his house, I would have been so thrilled I couldn't speak. But now, I just shook my head lightly. "Not tonight, I'm busy." "Work at the company?" In truth, it was about preparing for studying abroad, but I didn't tell him. I just nodded, implying I had to work overtime. "I can wait for you to finish, even if it's late." "No need, maybe another time," I replied calmly, and Ethan Carter was immediately stunned. He frowned, but I already told my parents. I wiped my mouth, stood up, and went to the room to pack my belongings. "Sorry, I really don't have time tonight." Laptop, French books, document bag. I carefully checked and neatly packed everything. Not long after, his cold voice echoed, "All right then, I'll ask Sophia to go with me." Hearing the bang, he slammed the door and left. I didn't look up, continuing to focus on my tasks. Because of my plans to study abroad, I went to the company to submit my resignation letter. "This is a good thing, but you'll need to finish handing over your work before leaving. Come on, let me treat you to lunch." Emily, my manager who had always been fond of me, invited me, and we went to a restaurant together. While waiting for the food, I scrolled through my social media feed and saw a new post from Sophia Young. In the photo, Sophia Young was sitting next to Ethan Carter, with his parents beside them. The four of them were smiling brightly. The caption read, "Such a joyful family dinner." Below it was a familiar-like icon. It was Ethan Carter, the man who never posted or browsed social media. He had always been like this. Every time we argued about Sophia Young, he would go and like her posts. This time, I didn't get angry as I used to. I moved my finger and pressed like. "I specially brought you to this French restaurant, try it, see if it's good." Emily picked up a piece of foie gras for me. I put it in my mouth, nodded, and suggested we go sing karaoke later. Emily teased me, asking, "If you come home late, aren't you afraid your family will say something?" I shook my head, turned off my phone, and smiled, "Then I just won't go home." The next morning, when I woke up in the hotel, I turned on my phone and saw a few unread messages from Ethan Carter. "Why is your phone off? Where are you? It's so late, why aren't you back yet?" In the past, I was always the one sending him messages like that. Every time Sophia Young called him out, he would turn off his phone to avoid me bothering him. No matter how late he came home or how angry I got, I would always wait for him at home. I thought for a moment and replied with one sentence, "Lately, work at the company has been hectic, so I won't be coming home for a few days." After a long while, he finally replied, "All right." The following days, I was busy preparing for studying abroad and didn't return home. Until today, while I was attending an art exhibition for an assignment, I received a message from Ethan Carter. "What time will you be done? I'll come pick you up." I thought for a moment, then agreed and sent him my location. At 5 p.m., I stepped out of the exhibition building and saw Ethan Carter's black car parked by the roadside. "Did your company move?" he asked, lowering the car window with a hint of curiosity. "No. I came to see an art exhibition." In the past, I had often wanted to invite him to join me at art exhibitions. But his work was always busy, and on the rare occasions he had time off, Sophia Young would always find some excuse to call him away. I would get upset, and he would impatiently say, "Sophia Young is a patient. Can't you show a little understanding? Art exhibitions are just for fun. You can go by yourself. Besides, I really don't understand those paintings." What he didn't know was that every time I wanted him to come to an art exhibition with me, it was because my own artwork was being displayed. It wasn't meaningless entertainment, it was my way of sharing joy and achievements with him. But after being rejected so many times, I stopped inviting him to exhibitions altogether. I quickly walked to the passenger seat and was about to open the door when Ethan Carter called out to me, "Anna." He paused for a moment, looking toward the exhibition building across the street. "How about we go in and take another look?" I shook my head. Before I could get into the car, Ethan Carter opened the driver's door and walked toward me. His expression darkened as he asked, "Why? You don't want to go?" I smiled faintly and said, "I've already seen enough. Let's go." Just as I was about to get in the car, he suddenly grabbed my hand. His face showed a mix of hesitation and a hint of guilt, "But I've never been to an art exhibition before. I want to give it a try." I froze for a moment, then smiled and said, "All right, let's go." In the expansive space of the exhibition, Ethan Carter and I walked side by side. His gaze stopped at a painting, and he hesitated. "Anna, what style does this painting belong to?" He rarely showed interest in my field of expertise, and he seldom paid much attention to my works. Even my graduation painting, Future, he only glanced at once before putting it aside. I looked up and softly replied, "This painting is in the Surrealist style, by the French artist, Marcel." Ting ting. Before I could finish, Ethan Carter's phone rang. Chapter 4. The caller's name displayed as Sophia. After just 2 rings, he hung up, put the phone back in his pocket, and continued looking up at the painting. The next second, the ringtone, ting ting, echoed again. He took out his phone, hesitated for a moment, and I immediately grabbed it, pressed the answer button, and turned on the speaker. From the other end came the weak, aggrieved voice of Sophia Young. "Ethan. I have such a terrible headache right now, my chest feels tight, and my vision is blurry while walking. I'm not feeling well and want to go to the hospital for a checkup. Can you come pick me up?" I looked up at Ethan Carter. He frowned and said, "I'll have my assistant pick you up." On the other end, Sophia Young immediately became emotional, her voice mixed with sobs. "No. Ethan, you know that only when you come can I calm down and cooperate with the treatment. I'm really scared I won't be able to control myself and hurt myself again." Ethan Carter's face immediately showed a conflicted expression. He stayed silent, looked at me, his lips moved as if wanting to say something. Of course, I knew, he wanted to go. As always, whenever Sophia Young called, he would drop everything and rush to her. Every time this happened, I was upset, and he would lose patience defending himself, even accusing me. We grew up together, Sophia Young is a patient. Is it wrong for me to take care of her a bit more? I've told you so many times already. There's really nothing between me and her. Anna Harper, can't you have a bit of compassion? Sophia Young has been through so much already. Why are you mad at her? Can you be a little more understanding? Stop making a fuss over nothing. There was a time when we had a fierce argument. I got upset, packed my things, and left the house. For an entire month I didn't return home, and he didn't bother to call or send a single message. After the Cold War, it was still me who had to lower myself and reach out to him. It's okay, you go ahead. I'll head back later on my own. Just as I was about to turn and leave, he stepped forward and grabbed my hand. I'll take you home first. I smiled and shook my head. It's fine, you should quickly pick her up and take her to the hospital. I'll stop by the nearby import supermarket to get some things. He looked surprised, hesitated for a moment, and softly said, all right, once I'm done, I'll come back right away, and we'll have dinner together. I thought for a moment and nodded. Okay, I'll go get the groceries first. After taking a few steps, his deep voice sounded from behind, Anna, I'm sorry. I didn't turn around, continuing to walk out as I smiled and said, it's okay, go quickly. By 7 p.m., I had already prepared dinner. Recently, I had learned to cook a few French dishes, seared foie gras, niçoise salad, and beef vegetable soup. Ethan Carter hadn't returned yet. Unlike before, I didn't wait for him this time. Instead, I took out the cutlery and enjoyed the meal myself. The foie gras wasn't up to standard. But I had grasped some secrets to making the beef soup. At 8 p.m., I finished eating and started reading a French book. When I got tired of reading, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my social media feed. Every time before, when Sophia Young called Ethan Carter out, she would always post something related to him. Tonight, for some reason, not a single post. At 10 p.m., the food I left for him had gone cold, so I put it in the fridge. Then I opened my computer to review documents related to the Paris Academy of Arts. After organizing the materials and taking detailed notes, it was already midnight. Still feeling a bit unsatisfied, I decided to watch a French movie to practice my speaking skills. After finishing the movie and heading to bed, I suddenly remembered Ethan Carter. I realized that the entire evening, I hadn't thought about him even once. Focusing wholeheartedly on something I love, it turns out to be so fulfilling and joyful. The next morning, when I woke up, Ethan Carter still hadn't returned. On my phone was a message from Emily, Anna Harper, come to the office to finalize your handover. I replied with a single word, okay, and hurriedly left the house to head to work. In the afternoon, while busy handling tasks, I finally received a call from Ethan Carter. Why didn't you reply to my messages? His anxious voice came through the line, and I froze for a moment before noticing his messages from the morning. I've been busy with work. What's wrong? My voice remained steady, my hands did not pause. He stayed silent for a moment, then said, last night, Sophia Young wasn't in a stable mood. I was afraid she might relapse if left alone, so I smiled faintly, it's okay. I'm not angry. You don't need to explain. He fell silent again. After a long pause, he asked in disbelief, Anna, are you really not angry? From his words, I could sense an inexplicable disappointment. It seemed as though he wanted me to be angry, to lose control. But I truly felt nothing. Yeah, I'm really not angry. I understand. At that moment, Sister Emily, who was beside me, gave me a knowing wink. I nodded at her and then said to him, Ethan, is there anything else? I'm busy. On the other end of the line, his anxious voice came through, I'll pick you up tonight, okay? Let's take a walk by the riverside. Chapter 5. Hearing the word stroll, I was a little surprised. We've been together for 6 years, yet we've rarely gone on dates, let alone taken a walk by the riverside, letting our souls drift with the night breeze. But every time he finished comforting Sophia Young, he would stroll with her all over the city, enjoying themselves. Regarding this, he explained to me, Sophia Young is a patient, walking outside more often is good for her condition. I couldn't suppress my anger and would always complain to him, but sometimes, when I'm under a lot of work pressure, I also want to take a walk with you and talk. He would always rub his forehead and look at me helplessly. If work pressure is too much, you can go out with your colleagues. Now I see, he was right. So, I told him on the other end of the line in a flat tone, no need, tonight I'm going to the bar with my colleagues. Very quickly, he asked in a low voice, are you planning to drink? Last year, there was a time when Sophia Young called him over to drink at her place. I waited for him all night, and by dawn, I saw Sophia Young post a status, he's so adorable when he's drunk. In the photo, his face was flushed, his eyes hazy as he leaned into Sophia Young's embrace. He didn't come home all night, and the next day, we argued, with me holding the photo to confront him. Last night, I really got drunk, but there's truly nothing between me and her, and we didn't sleep together. We've been best friends since childhood, she wasn't in a good mood, so I drank with her. What's the big deal? It's normal. He thought drinking outside, leaning into another woman's arms, was normal. So, I said to him as well, yeah, going to the bar is, of course, for drinking. The other end of the line was silent for a long time, alright, just drink a little, don't get too drunk. Yeah, I know. That evening, my colleagues organized a farewell party for me. We partied at the bar until past midnight, and the group was still in high spirits, urging each other to keep going. I smiled and nodded in agreement until I heard Emily's voice, Anna Harper, isn't that Ethan Carter over there? Following Emily's gaze, I saw Ethan Carter standing in front of a black car. Oh, I've only ever heard Anna Harper talk about him, this is the first time I've seen him in person. He's so handsome, no wonder Anna Harper is head over heels for him and doesn't look at anyone else. Come on, let's move on and not get in the way of the lovebirds. My colleagues teased. If it had been before, I would have felt both embarrassed and proud. Back then, I wanted the whole world to know how much I liked Ethan Carter. But now, I only felt a bit awkward, unsure of what to do. After my colleagues dispersed, I slowly walked over. Anna, are you drunk? He asked with concern. I shook my head, and while still under the influence of alcohol, I pushed his hand away when he tried to hold mine. Getting into the car, he gripped the steering wheel, his face full of disappointment. Do you remember what day it is today? I froze, thinking for a moment, only recalling that today was my last day at work. Then I heard his hoarse voice, today is my birthday. I hastily used the excuse of being tipsy, my face dreamy and apologetic, as I said to him, oh. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I drank too much and completely forgot. In truth, I wasn't drunk, nor had I forgotten anything. I still remembered. Last year on his birthday, I had booked a restaurant in advance and meticulously decorated it. Fresh flowers, gifts, and even a cake I had baked myself. The cake was designed based on a drawing I had made, with frosting depicting the two of us. I had even invited our closest friends, his friends and mine. These were people who had known us since our university days. We planned to meet at 8 p.m., but by midnight, the time for blowing out candles had long passed, and he still hadn't shown up. Our friends were both embarrassed and unsure of what to do. I had no choice but to call him, and his voice, filled with irritation, came through the line, I told you, didn't I? I'd come for dinner after finishing work. My heart trembled as I asked, Ethan, do you even remember what today is? Today? Oh, it's my birthday. I just remembered. I couldn't hold back my tears, but I tried to remain calm as I asked, so, where are you now? I'm at the office. Before he could finish, a sweet, gentle female voice chimed in on the other end, Mr. Ethan, come here quickly. The premiere is about to start, and I've been looking forward to it for so long. Alright, I'm coming, Sophia. He gently replied to Sophia Young, then lowered his voice and impatiently said to me, Alright, I never celebrate birthdays. It's late, go to sleep. The phone was on speaker, and after he hung up, the private room fell silent. A moment later, I couldn't hold back, tears started falling onto the cake. The drawing of two people gradually blurred, becoming indistinct. Anna, have you really forgotten? Ethan Carter's eyes were red, his hands, gripping the steering wheel, trembling slightly. I sighed, pretending to look apologetic as I glanced at him. Sorry. I really forgot. Besides, haven't you never celebrated your birthday before? His gaze suddenly flickered, revealing a complex, unreadable emotion. I smiled. It's okay. If you want to celebrate, we can make up for it when we get home. After saying that, I leaned my head against the seat, pretending to sleep. I'll take a quick nap, sober up. Wake me when we're home. It was a long while before the car finally started and drove forward. On the way, Ethan Carter remained silent, not uttering a single word. The car radio played Escaping the Tiger's Mouth, and the city began to drizzle. Every moment loving you is like a subway train rushing past. I never understood this lyric before, but now it resonates deeply. Through the light rain, the neon lights outside the car window turned into blurry streaks, carrying memories of Ethan Carter and me, flashing frame by frame in my mind. It's about to end, isn't it? Chapter 6. I thought so, but I still didn't choose his birthday to tell him. If the beginning is beautiful, then the ending should also be neat and complete. When I got home and stepped into the elevator, looking at the gap under my feet, I was momentarily stunned. Anna? Ethan Carter, standing beside me, called out, snapping me out of my thoughts. I smiled and said, It's nothing, I was just thinking about dinner tonight. At the door of the house, as soon as the door opened, a figure suddenly rushed out and threw herself into Ethan Carter's arms. Happy birthday, Ethan! Sophia Young's sweet voice rang out. Ethan Carter looked a bit awkward, raising his hand while nervously glancing at me. Oh, sister-in-law is here too. After a moment, Sophia Young looked at me meaningfully. Though her words addressed me, her entire body remained leaning against Ethan Carter. Yes. Come in. Let's celebrate Ethan's birthday together. I smiled gently, ignoring them, and walked straight into the kitchen. Anna, aren't you tired? Let me help you. Behind me, Ethan Carter's voice sounded. While washing vegetables, I calmly replied, We have guests at home. Shouldn't you stay and chat with them? After saying this, I realized it might make him think I was jealous, so I quickly turned around and added with a smile, Ethan, I'm fine, don't worry. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but before he could, Sophia Young stepped forward, taking his arm. Ethan, don't you want to see the gift I prepared for you? As she finished speaking, Sophia Young glanced at me and smiled. Provocation, boasting, or whatever it may be, I don't care anymore. I smiled in response, then turned back to continue my work. The house key was given to Sophia Young by Ethan Carter. He said that if there was ever an emergency, she could come over any time. Previously, there were many times she came unexpectedly, and I had never shown any pleasantness. But this time, from the moment I saw her arrive to when I laid the food on the table, I kept a faint smile on my face. At the dining table, Sophia Young sat next to Ethan Carter, intimately linking her arm with his. Sophia Young, sit across from me. His voice was low, while I held the knife and fork, smiling as I said, No need, wherever we sit, we're just eating. Today's menu was still French cuisine. After several trials, my cooking skills had improved significantly. Sophia Young tasted a piece of foie gras, suddenly frowned, and glanced at me, Sister-in-law, this foie gras is too gamey. Did you forget to remove the odor? To remove the odor, you can use red wine. We have a bottle at home, last time Brotherkin visited, he said it was excellent. Next time, I'll ask him to bring it for you. Be sure to use red wine to remove the odor next time, that's enough, just eat. Ethan Carter suddenly said coldly, then skewered a piece of foie gras and put it into his mouth. It's delicious. Anna, why have you recently taken a liking to French cuisine? Before I could answer, Sophia Young interjected with a laugh, the best French cuisine must be at Racine restaurant in Paris. That year, Ethan and I went to Paris and visited that very restaurant. As she finished speaking, the spoon in my hand trembled slightly. You two have been to Paris? Sophia Young nodded, gazing at Ethan Carter with sweet affection. That's right. Paris is such a romantic city, what couple wouldn't want to embrace under the Eiffel Tower? Back then, Ethan and I. Enough. Ethan Carter interrupted coldly, his deep eyes fixed on me. I smiled faintly. Oh? How did you two spend your time back then? Hearing my question, Sophia Young pouted slightly and continued in her sweet voice. Back then, we visited the Louvre. Ethan even explained the artworks to me. And the Eiffel Tower. We took pictures hugging under it. He even promised to take me there every year, just the two of us. Her smile grew brighter and brighter. Then, she picked up a piece of tomato, looking at it with disdain. Anna Harper, this beef vegetable soup, with tomatoes added, tastes awful. Don't you think there are things that, when placed in the wrong spot, just feel so unnecessary? As she finished speaking, she glanced at me slowly, a sly smile on her lips. That's enough. Suddenly, Ethan Carter clenched his hand into a fist and slammed it on the table. Get out. The furious look in his eyes instantly froze Sophia Young's smile. What? A moment later, he stood up, pointed toward the door, and looked at Sophia Young. I told you to get out. Don't you understand human language? Tears immediately welled up in Sophia Young's eyes. She bit her lip, stood up with reddened eyes, slammed the door, and left. Bang! The door closed, and Ethan Carter immediately stood up, grabbed the bottle of men's cologne beside him. Then he threw it into the trash. It was the birthday gift Sophia Young had given him. Eat. After a while, I spoke softly. Ethan Carter looked at me, his face showing a hint of guilt. Anna, she's always like that. Don't hold it against her. Is it good? I didn't look up. He murmured an as though he wanted to say something. I casually asked, how does it compare to Racine's? Anna. That trip to Paris with Sophia Young was back in high school. He hurriedly explained, back then, I didn't even know you. Chapter 7. 6 years have passed, and this is the first time Ethan Carter has called Sophia Young by her full name in front of me. Should I be happy? But I don't feel happy at all. Then should I feel sad? Actually, I do feel a bit sad. The trip to Paris for our 6-year anniversary, I had to plead with him for a long time before he finally agreed. Ethan, I study fine arts, you know that. I've always wanted to see the Louvre. What's so great about the Louvre? I don't understand any of that stuff. Then what about the Eiffel Tower? They say couples who embrace under the tower will be together forever. Alright, why believe in such silly legends? It's pointless. Every time I said something, he would counter with something that ruined my mood. Seeing me upset and silent, he reluctantly smiled and tried to appease me. Alright, Anna. I promise I'll go with you, okay? He promised, but when we got to the airport, he was still pulled away by a call from Sophia Young. Ethan, I always thought you were simply clueless about how to make a girl happy. Until now, I realize, you actually do know how. At this moment, I put my bowl down and quietly looked at Ethan Carter sitting across from me. I tried to control my emotions, but the bitterness in my heart surged, and my nose stung more and more. I've never asked much from you. All I wanted was a little interest and patience from you. But I didn't expect, it's not that you lack interest and patience. It's that you've given all your interest and patience to someone else. After I said that, Ethan Carter frowned, a trace of panic flashing across his face. No. Anna, it's not like that. I bit my lip, trying to smile. So, what does this mean? He stayed silent for a long time, seemingly about to step forward and explain to me, but then his phone rang. It was Sophia Young. Thud, the door closed. Under the pale light, I looked around the small room where he and I had lived together for 6 years. After that, without any lingering attachment, I began packing my belongings. Two people had spent 6 years together here. But erasing every trace to leave took only an hour. By 3 a.m., I had finished packing. I opened the bedside drawer and took out a painting titled Future. I hope my future always has you in it. The words I had spoken echoed in my ears, on graduation day, when I hugged Ethan Carter tightly, smiling brightly. I had once thought that when we got married, I would paint another piece and call it Family. But we had no future, and we could never have a family. I let out a soft laugh, tore the painting apart, and threw it into the trash. 5 days later, I saw Ethan Carter again. Anna. How long are you planning to run away from me? These past days, I had blocked all means of contact with him. Unable to reach me, he went to my workplace. But I had already quit my job, so of course, I wasn't there. It wasn't until today, after I had completed my study abroad procedures and went to invite Ms. Emily for a meal, that I accidentally ran into him downstairs. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven stubble on his face. Looks like I'll have to postpone that meal. Emily stepped forward, saw Ethan Carter, and smiled knowingly as she said, Anna Harper, you're about to leave for Paris. Spend some time with your boyfriend. Ethan Carter's expression immediately froze, like a statue. I stayed calm, looked at him in front of me, and spoke in a gentle, sincere voice, Ethan Carter, let's talk. I sat in the passenger seat while Ethan Carter, beside me, smoked continuously. I don't know how much time passed, but in the suffocating silence, we both almost simultaneously spoke, Anna, let's get married. Ethan Carter, let's break up. After I said it, his face turned pale. Meanwhile, my heart trembled slightly, but I quickly regained composure and said, in 3 days, I'll leave to study abroad at the Paris Academy of Arts. He hurriedly asked, when did you decide this? I took a deep breath and looked into his eyes, since the night I returned from Paris. He froze slightly, as if unable to believe it. After a long pause, he finally spoke in a soft voice, tinged with bitterness, was it also from that moment you decided to leave me? I smiled faintly, saying nothing. Ethan Carter stared into my eyes, slightly reddened, as if unwilling to accept it, yet filled with despair. Even his usual cold and arrogant tone now sounded hoarse. No, it's okay, I can wait for you to return. Wait for you to come back, and then we'll get married, alright? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I can wait for as long as it takes. His voice grew increasingly agitated as he gripped my hand tightly, the corners of his eyes reddening. My lips trembled slightly, wanting to smile, but unable to. After a while, I finally spoke calmly, that ring wasn't actually lost, I took it off and threw it into the Seine. What? Ethan Carter was completely stunned, looking at me in utter disbelief. When I saw you wearing our couple's ring while holding someone else's hand, I just found it laughable. I chuckled softly, pulling my hand away from his. 6 years, 6 years of enduring you, 6 years of holding on to unrealistic illusions about you. It's almost funny. Ethan Carter, I know these past years have been exhausting and difficult for you too. From today, I'll let you go, and I'll let myself go as well. After saying this, he paused for a moment, gazing at me with sorrowful and longing eyes. No. Anna, it's my fault. I promise, I'll change from now on. Please, give me another chance, won't you? Wherever you want to go, I'll go with you. Paris, yes. I'll go with you to Paris, okay? His voice was filled with sorrow and regret. But I simply smiled faintly, shaking my head. For 6 years, I've always followed your steps, never once stopping to admire the scenery before me. I used to dream of going to Paris with you, but it wasn't until I went to Paris alone that I finally understood. Paris was always beautiful, even without you. With that, I opened the car door, my voice devoid of emotion. Goodbye, Ethan Carter. After walking a few steps, I stopped and turned back for one last look. Ethan Carter sat in the driver's seat, his head buried deep in his arms. His shoulders trembled. Was he crying? I couldn't tell. At that moment, a line from that song suddenly surfaced in my mind, escaping the tiger's mouth, "I've survived the danger." A moment later, I chuckled softly. I removed the couple's ring he had given me, casually tossing it into the air. Then, without looking back, I walked toward a future without him.